Welcome to Kindness Stories, the place where real acts of courage, kindness, and unexpected strength inspire us to be better every day. If you love true stories that show how ordinary people can do extraordinary things, then you're in the right place. Make sure you subscribe and stay with us till the end, because this story will remind you why you should never judge a book by its cover. This story starts in a place we all know too well, a classroom. Not just any classroom, but a college-level introductory philosophy class. It's the sort of class where you're meant to question ideas, not people, but human nature is rarely so neat. Sitting in the very back row, near the window that offered a sliver of sunlight during the late afternoon lectures, was a woman named Emma. Emma didn't look like the sort of person who'd stand out in a crowd. She wore simple jeans and loose sweatshirts, her dark hair pulled back in a plain ponytail, glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. She was older than most of her classmates by about 10 years. At 32, Emma had returned to college to finish the degree she'd abandoned years ago when her mother fell ill. After years of caring for family and working dead-end jobs to make ends meet, she'd finally found her chance to get back on track. She was a quiet presence in the classroom, never the first to raise her hand, but always attentive. Her notebook filled with meticulous notes written in neat handwriting. Unfortunately, her age, her simple style, and her quiet demeanor made her an easy target for a group of students who needed someone to ridicule. The ringleader of this group was a guy named Travis. Travis came from an entitled family that owned several local businesses. He was 21, cocky, always leaning back in his chair with a smirk plastered on his face. Travis had a way of finding weaknesses in others, then using them for a laugh. His main sidekick was Chelsea, a petite blonde who looked sweet at first glance but had a mean streak that came out whenever she felt threatened or bored. Together with a few other hangers-on, Travis and Chelsea made up what the rest of the class privately called the VIP row. They always sat front and center, loud, disruptive, and completely dismissive of the professor's authority. Emma tried her best to ignore them. She'd never been a fighter. She'd never been someone who drew attention to herself. For weeks she endured the whispered jokes, the snide remarks, the rolled eyes when she answered questions. It started small. Travis once leaned back and asked her if she was the teacher's mom. Pretending not to know her name, the others laughed. Emma forced a smile, focused on her notebook, and said nothing, but the jokes grew bolder. Meaner. One afternoon, Professor Hanson asked the class to split into small groups to discuss Plato's allegory of the cave. Emma gathered her books and moved to join a group closer to the front. Travis saw his chance. He motioned for Emma to join his group. She hesitated. She'd overheard them mocking other students before, but she reminded herself that she was an adult. These were just kids trying to look tough. Maybe they'd surprise her. Maybe they'd actually want her input. She sat down. Travis greeted her with an exaggerated grin. Hey, Emma, you must know all about shadows on the wall. You're practically ancient history, right? Chelsea giggled. The others followed suit. Emma felt her cheeks burn. She tried to steer the conversation back to the text, pulling out her annotated copy, pointing out relevant passages. But Travis wasn't interested in philosophy. What's with all the notes? Travis asked, snatching her notebook. Do you color code your grocery list too? Emma reached for the notebook, but Travis held it just out of reach. Flipping through pages, reading aloud in a mock voice. Chelsea leaned closer, peering at the margins. Look, she rats questions to herself. What is truth? Chelsea read aloud, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Isn't that cute? Maybe you should find out what a hairbrush is while you're at it. The table erupted in laughter. Emma felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. She knew she shouldn't let it get to her. But the truth was she'd fought so hard to come back to school. She'd worked double shifts, sold her car, moved into a tiny basement apartment. This class was supposed to be her fresh start, but sitting there, surrounded by mocking faces, she felt like the same helpless kid she'd been back in high school. The professor called time. The group scattered back to their seats. Emma retrieved her notebook from Travis, who let it go with an exaggerated bow. She spent the rest of the lecture staring out the window, her mind a swirl of shame and anger. That evening, Emma trudged back to her apartment, dropped her bag by the door, and collapsed onto her worn-out couch. Her cat, Oscar, jumped into her lap, purring. She buried her face in his fur and let the tears come. Asterisk, but when the tears dried, Emma did something she hadn't done in a long time. She opened her closet, pulled out a dusty duffel bag, and unzipped it. Inside were her old MMA gloves, a pair of black shorts, and her black belt, folded neatly, untouched for years. Asterisk, most people who knew Emma now had no idea that once, a decade ago, she'd been on the verge of competing professionally in mixed martial arts. She'd trained under some of the toughest coaches in the state. She'd fought in regional tournaments, won trophies, and inspired young girls at her gym. But when her mother fell sick, she walked away from it all. Asterisk, standing there, holding the black belt in her hands, Emma felt something stir inside her. Not anger, not revenge, but a quiet resolve. She needed to remember who she was, not for Travis, not for Chelsea, but for herself. Asterisk, the next day, Emma dug out her old gym card. The place had changed ownership, but the mats were the same, the smell of sweat and rubber and determination still thick in the air. She signed up for the evening classes, slipping in after her college lectures. For the first few weeks, she kept her head down, working the heavy bags, sparring lightly, feeling the muscle memory return. Asterisk, with every session, her confidence grew. The bruises on her shins, the ache in her shoulders, the calluses on her knuckles. They were reminders that she was more than the meek woman who let people laugh at her in class. Asterisk, but the bullying didn't stop. In fact, it got worse. Travis started mocking her in front of the whole class. One day, he pulled up a picture of a granny on his phone and said, "Hey, Emma, look, it's your twin." Asterisk, Emma didn't react. She just smiled. Her calmness seemed to infuriate Travis even more. Chelsea joined in, spreading rumors that Emma was spying on other students for the professor. They made up stories that she was desperate for attention, that she lived in a trailer park, that she was probably a crazy cat lady with 20 cats. Asterisk, one afternoon, Professor Hanson announced that for the final class, students would give short presentations in front of everyone. Travis and his crew groaned, but then shared glances that promised mischief. Emma knew she'd be their prime target. Asterisk, the day of the presentations arrived. Emma stood in line, waiting for her turn. She clutched her note cards, but her hands didn't shake. She felt solid, grounded. Asterisk, when it was Travis's turn, he strutted up to the front, phone in hand, projecting a slideshow about perception and reality. Halfway through, he clicked to a slide that featured a Photoshop image of Emma's face pasted onto a crumbling statue with the words "History comes alive." Asterisk, the class gasped. Some laughed nervously. Professor Hanson stepped forward, about to intervene, but Emma raised her hand. Asterisk, it's okay, Professor, she said calmly. I'd like to respond when it's my turn. Asterisk, when her name was called, Emma walked to the front of the room. She didn't bother with the projector. She just looked out at the sea of faces, some embarrassed, some curious. Travis leaned back, arms crossed, grin wide. Asterisk, Emma took a breath. Asterisk, when I was 19, I had a choice, she began. I could chase a dream I'd had since I was a kid, or I could stay home and care for my sick mother. I chose my family. It cost me years of my life, but I'd do it again. Asterisk, she paused, locking eyes with Travis. Asterisk, people look at someone like me, older, quiet, plain, and think they know my story. They think I'm weak, easy to push around. But strength isn't always loud. It doesn't always wear fancy clothes or sit in the front row. Sometimes, strength sits quietly, waiting. Asterisk, she smiled, her eyes glinting with something that made even Travis shift uncomfortably. Asterisk, after class, Travis and his crew cornered her in the hallway. Asterisk, hey, Emma, Travis sneered. That was cute. You gonna cry now? Asterisk, Emma slipped her bag off her shoulder. She looked at him, really looked at him. He was taller, yes, broader, but he carried himself like a guy who'd never been punched in the face. She'd sparred with guys twice his size. Asterisk, not gonna cry, she said, her voice calm. But I think you should stop while you're ahead. Asterisk, Travis laughed. Or what? Asterisk, Emma tilted her head. Or I'll show you exactly what strength looks like. Asterisk, Travis took a step forward, finger jabbing the air. What are you gonna do? Grandma, knit me a sweater. Asterisk, the hallway was empty except for a few students who had lingered to see what would happen. One of them pulled out their phone, recording. Asterisk, Emma didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. She simply shifted her weight, her stance relaxed, but unmistakably ready. Her eyes narrowed slightly, focused on his center of gravity. Asterisk Travis lunged forward, as if to shove her. It was over in a flash. Emma pivoted, grabbed his arm, and with a simple twist and sweep, she dropped him flat on his back. The sound echoed through the hallway. Travis's friends froze, mouths open. Asterisk.